Our special guest today is Dr. Michael Santucci, an audiologist and president and founder of Sensaphonics, which is a globally known audio company based in Chicago, Illinois. They make custom molded in-ear monitors, earplugs and hearing protection for musicians, sound engineers or industrial use, motorsports and for aircraft pilots. And they even make them for space shuttle astronauts. Dr. Santucci also heads up the Listen Safe initiative as a team member of the World Health Organization.
Hi, Dr. Santucci. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you. Very well.
So are you in Chicago or where's your offices based?
Our office is really close to downtown Chicago. We chose that location because so many bands come through here. Pretty much North America, Chicago gets everybody.
Right.
There's a tour coming around. It comes through here. It's centrally located. And a lot of times tours even stay here. If they're doing other Midwest cities, they don't want to stay in St. Louis or Milwaukee, perhaps, and they'll stay in Chicago and just go back and forth. So the bands are here, and when they need services, we were right here, and I could either go to the hotel room or they'd come to the office.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Chicago, I mean, we were talking, so it's wintertime in Chicago. It's a little chilly, but that is a great hub, especially I know as a musician in the summertime, there's tons and tons of gigs in that area within the tri-state. So that's a very busy live music area, right?
Oh yeah, man, it gets a little crammed in the winter. We have tons of blues clubs here and jazz clubs. That's a big focus, but there's really a lot of different venues here that are great, that play all different size of bands and types of bands up to arenas and all that. But yeah, it's an active music scene.
So just a little bit about you. Where are you from originally? What's your home state?
I'm a homer.
Oh, okay.
I raised in Chicago and ended up coming back here to help my parents out, and ended up growing a business and having a family, and never left. It's a wonderful town, but yeah, I'm here.
So you went to university in Iowa, is that correct?
I've had 3 degrees. So my bachelor's degree in audiology was from University of Iowa.
Okay.
It was a great experience for me. And my master's came from Illinois State University here in Illinois. And then I got a doctoral degree from Salish University in Pennsylvania. So
wow, that's a lot of years of college.
Yeah, lots of years.
Yeah. So I know that you mentioned in your bio that you kind of initially got involved with the Chicago music scene, and that kind of grew into being, obviously you were an audiologist already at that point, but you grew into your concern about musicians' hearing. Tell me about how that happened, how that came about.
I come from a family of musicians. My sisters played multiple instruments. We all grew up taking lessons. I played trumpet. I took trumpet lessons for 12 years straight.
Wow. Great.
So I can play. My dad had his own big band trumpet player, and music was really lively in our house. It wasn't amplified, but it was surely loud enough you knew what loudness was, and we played in bands and orchestras. And as I got to be an audiologist, I hadn't thought about music and hearing. But friends of mine with bands would come to me and say, my singer is going to quit. She's losing her hearing, and she doesn't want to do it because she's studying to be an actress, and help us. And I said, have her put in earplugs. And they go, have you ever tried playing with earplugs in? I'm like, no. And I did. And I realized how horrible they were. So I went on a search for ways to filter earplugs, vent it so it wasn't so reducing. I found 3 recording studios here in Chicago that all were willing to work with me with the gear it takes. I didn't have a pink noise generator and these high quality speakers. We could measure the distance from my head, and I'd start putting different earplugs in my ear, and we had a microphone down, a tiny mic down near my eardrum. So we would just do real-time analyzing of different earplugs and what it did. And the one thing that was common for all of them is it took out all the highs and not as much lows.
Yeah, it doesn't create a very pleasant experience.
Yeah, that uneven damping, especially the muffling effect of it, makes it impossible for musicians to really even play with accuracy, never mind enjoying it.
Yeah.
And that was the real thing. You don't care what the fidelity of your jackhammer is. You can just turn it down and it didn't matter. But now when we're talking about music, it has to have some high fidelity. Yeah. So I attempted these different options, and a local company, Automotive Research here in Chicago, And its founder and president, Meade Killian, a mentor of mine, just said, gee, I hear you've been working on this and I've got a plug that I think is going to work really well. You want to try it? And so I beta tested this ER15 earplug back in 1989. Had the bass player, Steve Rodby, I hope he doesn't mind. The bass player from Pat Metheny was actually the first player ever to try them. And then I had a couple of people in Chicago Symphony that tried them and everybody was like, wow, I can use this. And I realized there was a pathway for people in the music industry that actually wanted to retain their hearing.
Yeah, because that's, I mean, the thing is, we were just talking about that before we went on air. I was with Cirque du Soleil for many years, and they had a really stringent program about checking hearing to protect you because you're doing 10 shows a week. And, musicians, we tend to like, a lot of us like loud music, but you don't really think about the repercussions as you get older, right?
Of course. One of the things I always say is, to musicians here, when they come in, I go, your hearing isn't something you always think about. It's the only thing I think about. So when you show up here, we're going to look at your hearing and all you have to do is come in once a year and then just follow the instructions. And it's not that limiting. Right. I like things loud. So I'm not one of those finger waggers, and I'm not surely one to make everything limited to 85 decibels where nobody can enjoy it. Yeah. It's given people the correct products and strategies to protect while still maintaining the quality. Ear monitors is a good way to do that, and there's some limitations we can talk about.
Yeah, and you've I know you have your new well, I guess it's technology, but you've updated it. Actually, let's back up a little bit. When did you found Sensaphonics originally? Was it, I think it was 1985, is that correct?
1985, the idea of creating these earplugs came around. 1989 is when it started rolling because I'd actually written an article about these ER15 earplugs. And everybody was taking notice. So I became the expert by default, since there wasn't another audiologist in the world.
Right, because this is
become the expert.
And this is before all the inner companies sort of started coming out and into the market, right?
Well, there was one that came to me when they saw these articles and said, we're on the same page, and asked me if I would join forces and help. And I said, sure, this is great. I'd never heard of in-ear monitors. And we're talking 1989. There was only maybe 10 bands using them back then.
Yeah, everybody's using the floor wedges at 120 decibels.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so these had round diaphragm, like an Apple earbud type of transducers in them that sound really good when they're open and able to move. But when you put them in a shell or an ear mold, it kind of reduces the movement. So it sounds very mid-rangey. It loses the lows and highs. So you'd have to vent it. So when you put a hole in it, sound would come in from the drum, just the drum kit alone. Even if you didn't have any stuff mic'd on, everything was mic'd off stage. You still had a drum kit in a crowd, and you'd have to turn it up to be louder than that, whatever that was, right?
And it becomes a pyramid where you keep going up and up and up volume. Right?
So I told him that this wouldn't work for hearing, and he goes, oh, they won't do anything else. And so I designed an ear monitor, the first balanced armature speaker, which actually sounds better the more the ear's sealed. Yeah. And that was our first product in 92. And luckily, I had an engineer that heard about it, and he was going to do a show, first time only, for a poet named Ken Nordine. He's also a famous voiceover person on TV, just passed away recently at age 97, but was friends with Ken Kesey and Jerry Garcia and all the Kool-Aid Acid people. He did a thing called Word Jazz on public radio for 30 years. You might have heard it. And he'd have all these cool jazz musicians, and he'd do this beat poetry. Well, he was going to do his first live show, and he called me and he wanted to try the ear monitors, and he liked them for the show. He used them. And then he said, oh, the Grateful Dead engineers were recording the show and wanted to know if you'll make them for the Grateful Dead.
Wow.
They're interested. And so that's what put me on the map. And then I went to the local sound company, Harry Woods at DB Sound, and who was doing the Stones and Aerosmith and all these bands. And I said, I've got this cool new technology.
The word, that's actually, it's funny because I've worked with J-Lo and Miley, a bunch of different people. You've worked with a long list of folks, but the word travels fast, right? When there's a good product, especially something like that, because when I know my own personal experience being in a large theater or playing in a large venue, you have a lot of ambient sound flying around. You can't, even with good stage monitors, it's hard to hear yourself, right?
Sure.
So it's nice to have that option.
Yeah, and the competitive monitoring is what I was seeing, that I would
Yeah.
see that the drummer, when I do courses here. So first off, I'm the only audiologist in making in-ear monitors. And we
Right.
have here a lab where we make things and create things. And we also have a clinic.
Oh,
We've seen probably about 30 or 40,000 musicians
wow.
over the years. We
Right.
see at least 2,000 a year here, and then we go out and see people and such. So
Yeah.
I would hear firsthand from people like yourself, this is what I don't like. This is why I
Right.
won't wear hearing protection. This is what is in the way of my ear monitoring. This is why I
Yeah.
turn them up so loud. And so everything was designed with a solution in mind to help solve that problem and
Yeah.
still maintain hearing. And that's
And
kind of
that
the
kind of
idea.
brings us also to your new technology, or at least updated technology, the 3DME system. Because one thing about the in-ears can be a little weird if you haven't used them, is you can feel very isolated. It could feel like this. And this new technology helps to solve that issue. Can you talk about that and the development of that process?
Absolutely. It started with, again, having clients out there. First off, I'll tell you about a study that got me going totally.
Okay.
And it was the fact that I thought in-ear monitors were safety devices.
Ah,
So I thought, okay. And I had an engineer, used to be an engineer, studied to be an audiologist at Vanderbilt, Jeremy Fetterman. He's now a researcher for the Navy. Brilliant guy. And he said, I'd like to see what the difference is between how loud people turn floor wedges compared to ear monitors.
right.
And I said, what a great study. He
Yeah.
goes, so what we're going to do, I have the way to measure at the eardrum. And so let's put in an ear monitor and tell these artists to turn up to what they like, preferred listening level. And we'll record it. And then we'll do a floor wedge and we'll ask and we'll compare the differences on how loud they liked each one. And we had 90 trials. And between those 90 trials, the difference in dBs between floor monitor and in-ear monitor was 0.8 dB. Not even 1 dB difference. If your floor monitor was 100, you put on ear monitors and guess what? They were 100.
Yeah, you just turn
Your
them
floor
up.
monitors were 120, your ear monitors were 120 if they could produce that much.
Interesting. Right.
It's the musician's brain. When you think about you as a musician, and I know when I played, it's not something that you're born with. There may be some innate stuff, but you have to really learn the timbre of your instrument, pitch, when you're in tune, when you're out of tune, tempo, all these different variations and qualities of music. And by the way, loudness is another one, except you're not training loudness. It's just happening around you.
Right. It sort of
Your brain
organically
gets
happens.
so used to this is what's good. So if you've been practicing guitar at 100 dB your whole life, you're going to put on in-ears and you're going to turn it to familiar. 100. And I'm hearing more details. This is fantastic.
Right. Exactly.
So it scared me because I'd been selling these as protective devices with that assumption that people were turning down, even with these isolating ones. So I said, okay, let's turn down the ear monitors and the floor monitors and see how low you can go without being able to play. The floor monitors could only go down 2.5 dB. At -3, most everybody was saying, I'd be a little worried I couldn't hear enough.
Right.
Ear monitors, the average was 6 dB down, some 10. Oh, it sounds good here. So if you show people where to turn it, it can be safe. So first off, that brought me to the idea that ear monitors aren't safe by design. They're earphones that you can turn up really loud. So it's only safe if you turn the volume down and nobody knows.
Right.
And we'll talk about that because I have a new piece coming out. In fact, it's patented. And I can talk about it because my competitors and other earphone companies are supporting this. It's called DB Check Pro. It reads the drive voltage of whatever your earphones are plugged into, and it'll read out, it's a little key fob, how loud you're listening in dB to your earphones. And then it tells you how many allowable minutes you have on the OSHA and NIOSH scales, 2 different scales.
Super smart.
So just get you, and so I was just going to put mine on there, and I put everybody on there. Put all my competitors, I put Sennheiser, I put Shure, put all the different headphones, studio phones. And I was waiting for a negative reaction, and they're all calling me up. Thank you so much. We didn't ever, we don't want to hurt anybody. Everybody's into it. They go, this is long overdue. People need to know how loud they're listening to. You can make a choice, but at least you should know.
Because the companies, and these companies, fans of music. They care about the musicians.
Of course.
They don't want people hurting themselves
Of
because
course not.
yeah, you
Right.
can't, when you're standing next to the Marshall, you're thinking, oh, I'll just turn up my ears. But, that does take a toll, right?
Right. So nobody's doing that or saying, who cares?
Yeah,
I had
exactly.
one guitarist who had backstage had me after a show, a famous guy, and so was the Marshall guy. And he looked at both of us. Do you guys know each other? And we met. And he goes, you ruined my hearing. You saved my hearing.
That's true. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think as a musicians, we want to, as we age, I'm in my mid 50s, and as we age, we want to retain our hearing. We want to be able to create and even just talk and listen to people,
Right. So
It's
back
so
to
important.
these isolating ear monitors. So it made me realize that not everybody's safe using these things. And now we can come up with a way to try and show them how loud it was. I used to actually stick the probe in their ear with a sound level meter, and I'd have to get on stage at sound check and take everybody's levels. And I did it for hundreds of people, but it was
That's
always
great, though.
inconvenient. And the band was having a bad day. If you're A-listers, sometimes it was like,
Right.
they don't want to do it today. And I'm like, I just traveled 2 hours, right? So it wasn't very practical to go out and do it for every band, to have them set levels. So that's why this product came. But I'd always see them pulling one out of their head. And here's the thing, as an audiologist, I know the idea that you hear with your brain. Binaural summation, it sounds complicated. 2 ears, binaural, summating together gives you a perceptual increase of a 6 dB louder. That's twice as intense and about over half as loud. Right. So 10 dB is twice as loud perceptually. 3 dB is twice as intense.
Gotcha.
And we measure injury by intensity. So when you have two together, if you put 90 dB and 90 dB of music, your brain's going to go, oh, it's 96. It sounds really plenty loud. And you're only giving your ears 90 each.
Right.
Well, went out. And now, oh, this one's got to go up 6 dB to make it sound 96 because you don't have that binaural summation.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, this ear doesn't have any protection anymore. It's getting bashed by a drum kit and whatever else is going on the back of the PA or whatever. And if it gets loud enough in this ear, because you're hearing with your brain, it'll start masking out the other ear.
Yeah, I've experienced that exact same.
And I explained that a lot of people go, what do you mean? I go, well, if you're in a crowded place and you're on a cell phone and you can't hear, if you cover the ear, can't you hear better? Yes. Well, so what happens is
your brain is smart. It kind of compensates for,
Yeah. So using one ear, the happening is that the open ear is getting bashed and the other ear is getting bashed. And so it's actually probably worse for your hearing than using none.
Right.
It may sound fine. So I asked him, why are you doing that? Oh, I'm in a fishbowl. I'm too isolated. Yeah. I look out, I see a bunch of open mouths. It's like I'm in a fishbowl. So of course, everybody would put a shotgun or ambient mics facing the audience. And it's a great idea. And you can bring some in. The other option was pull one out or stick a hole in it. Oh, I got holes in them. Now I can hear again. But of course, there goes your hearing because there's no reduction of sound level. So, so those two, don't pull one out and don't put a hole in it. Those are bad for your hearing. Keep two in and use the audience mics. And that seemed to improve things. But then you'd still see them doing that. And I go, a couple artists. And I'm like, what are you doing? They go, it's not the same. Those audience mics aren't the same. And I had one say to me, when I run to the front of the stage and a girl says, I want to have your babies, I want to know which one said it. And he goes, my ears aren't here and there.
Perfectly reasonable point.
He goes, I'd like my ears to travel with me. He goes, these are stationary ears on either side of the stage. He goes, that's not how.
And it's a little.
Didn't do that. He goes, I move around.
Yeah, it can be disorienting, right? When that
it is.
It's kind of.
So I thought, okay, so they're losing spatial cues. Of a large room because it makes you feel like you're in a closet, but you're looking into a large room, right? It's like going into a closed closet with your blindfolded and walking into a gymnasium. You don't have to hear it, but you went from a small space to a big space. You just know it. Yeah. You can hear it. Well, they're seeing the big space and they're in the closet.
Yeah, it's
weird. And then the drummer who used to be here and their guitar player over here, now they're just all right here. And no matter where I go, they don't move ever. I turn around and look at my drummer, he's still behind me.
That's funny.
So they pull one out and they get those cues back at the expense of their hearing. So I thought, let's design a microphone, put them in the ear monitors and activate the mic so that they can hear and we can reduce it. Turn the levels down so you're not too loud, but now you're getting all those cues at a reduced level, but It's a full bandwidth mic. It goes 20 to 20K. It's got headroom up to 140 dB without clipping.
Wow.
So it can handle the intensity, and it's an analog. It wasn't any digital in it. So it's real time, hearing what you want to hear. And that's how it started, to keep them both in their ears.
Yeah.
So now you get all your spatial and localization cues mixed in.
And that's what's great about that too, is, you know, having that there on board, but essentially with you. You don't have to depend on a monitor guy to feed that into your ears, right? Because that's part of the thing too. And then that disorientation aspect of having in-ears, which, I mean, I have these in now. If you can't hear, like you said, the space around you, or if it doesn't move with you, it can be really unnatural and a very odd feeling.
Yes, yeah. And so that's the reason for the one ear pullout, and that was the motivation to create the 3D.
Right.
So it was called the 3D Arrow, and all it had was the ability to open up the pack and with a control turn down the mic in 4 dB steps or bring it up to 0. There was also a switch that allowed you to go from whatever reduced ability you wanted to have, bring it down 15 dB for the stage level through the mics. But then between songs, you could click a button and it's like you pulled them out of your head.
Right.
We EQ'd the mics. You know, an ear canal, which people don't realize, has a resonant frequency. It's a tube. Like any other tube, it resonates, and it's mostly around 3,000 to 4,000 hertz. And the amplitude, the size of that, the additional volume could be anywhere from 6 dB to 26 dB louder.
Right. Wow.
And so the reason people lose hearing from loud sound in the 3 to 6K hertz region, everybody, is because of that resonance peak. A big part of it is because of the resonant peak. So we see the same hearing injuries frequency in people in the military as we do for a violin player in the Chicago Symphony, or a metal drum player, or a miner, or whatever. Everybody gets hurt. Different sounds, always in the 3 to 6K range, so we can identify that noise loss.
Right. And that, I mean, losing that range, you know, that's where we can, you know, basically when people are talking, that's so important, right? To understand words, sibilants. When you start losing that, you can't communicate properly. And having that, and that also comes back to the World Health Organization, your mission with them.
Yeah, we can move on to that, but I'd like to finish off about the progression of how this happened, because I actually had a couple of hearing impaired musicians who had severe loss, not from playing music, just from other circumstances. By the way, musicians can lose hearing for other reasons, and said, gee, you know, I can't play. I don't have a monitor engineer. I go to a club and I have a wedge and my hearing's so bad. If I turn that wedge to what I like, it chases everybody out of the room. So I can't even play live anymore. But I notice you have microphones and an output. You could take binaural recordings from them. Couldn't I feed that output into a mixer and mix these mics for my hearing loss and correct it? And I'm like, sure, if you want to try it. Wow. And he called me back. He cried. He said, I haven't heard those sounds in so long.
Interesting.
And so we started demoing it to people, and it got into one of the magazines, the Pro Audio magazines. And all of a sudden people started calling for appointments to come and use it. And they would cry because they could hear again. And I'm like, this is needed. There's a lot of injury out there, right?
Yeah.
So it's too big a stuff. And I met a guy through friends and an associate, Heather Manick, my famous audiology compatriot. She went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and found a gentleman that knew a person that could help me. I didn't have the funding or the ability to create apps or create a Bluetooth connection to packs where you'd have to be, but this company did. So we joined forces and we created the 3DME, which is music enhancement. And we turned it from a custom only $2,500 product into a universal fit $700 product with a million more features. So
So and when you say universal fit, that's when people can actually use the they have the I guess foam tips.
Ears, we get foam tips with it. You can also customize that with a with a custom sleeve. So we make a sleeve you can slide the earphone into, or soon coming out is the complete custom, which is all what everybody wants on the A-list side, is to have the big, huge custom earphones in their ear. That's just the way it goes. Everybody wants that. Nobody wants to wear a universal fit in the A and B list people. So we have that coming out soon.
And And you have with Sensaphonics, you have audiologists, basically approved audiologists that work with your company that make the molds, right? Because that's a very specific process.
The making of the molds is something that I can teach anybody to do without being an audiologist. That's really not the key. The key is the knowledge of hearing and music, which none of us have. They don't teach that in school. Well, they don't.
Right.
So I run courses here, seminars. It's a 2-day seminar about here's the stage, here's a floor monitor. Why are those out there? They don't know. They didn't know there was a monitor engineer. Most people going to a big show at an arena don't know there's some guy on stage mixing separately for the band. Right. So this is the knowledge base is nothing. And they always say, why don't they just turn it down?
Yeah.
And I go, okay, drummer. And so we have a live band set up. And I go,
tell Van Halen to turn it down.
Right. Well, but even even this, the thing, I'd say, okay, drummer, just play, don't kill it, give us a beat. And everybody's looking at their meters going, that's 100 dB. I go, right. And he's not even killing it.
Yeah.
So you have to hear louder than the drums to hear yourself. So now you get it, right? So we can make the drummer not play loud, but then it takes all the fun out. So it's just loud. Music is loud. It just is. There's not a lot you can do about it.
Who's some of the, I mean, I know you have a long list, but who are some of the bands that you guys work with? Some of those, the well-known bands. I know it's a very long list, but who are some of the ones that you really love working with?
You know, the thing is, I wear two hats. One is a doctor of audiology, and the other one is a manufacturer of products. So the only thing I'm actually morally and legally able to talk about are the ones using the products, not the ones, and I have fantastic stories.
Okay, I got you.
But unfortunately for the listeners, I can't share that, nor would I. Privacy is a big thing, and I think that's the whole thing, especially with this 3D ME. This is one of the things, again, we discovered. It is now a product that is got the microphones in it, just like the other one, except now you have an app, a Bluetooth, a connection to the pack. The app has controls over the microphones.
Right.
You can go up 12 dB up or down.
So you can adjust the controls, save them, and that saves to the
Absolutely. Ears, right? And then there's a limiter. So you can set this limiter. It is just a peak limiter. It's not going to kill you, but it'll keep the average levels to where you set it. Average, right? So it's not squashing everything, no compression, but it's just limiting. And so you can enhance the frequencies with a 7-band EQ. So let's say you've lost some hearing, you can change what you need, or you want to tune your earplug. Oh, I think I need a little more low and the highs are in too bright, or I need more high. It's a tunable earplug. And so when we work with the symphonies, it's the greatest thing. They're not using ear monitors. They couldn't mic every instrument, but it's an earplug that suddenly we present it to certain people. I've done a number of orchestras with Heather, and we count how many criers. And literally, there are criers every demo, and I know who they are. They're the people that are losing hearing, that are first chair, that know that somebody wants their job, and they're never going to say they can't hear as well, but they know they're not playing as well. They know it. And all of a sudden, now they've corrected it, and nobody knows. They don't know if you're just protecting yourself. You just turned it down. Nobody knows what you're doing with that thing. It's your app on your phone.
But it's the thing, you know, when you're, and I mean, I've lived with that with Cirque du Soleil, and, you know, when you're making a living and that your living is dependent on being able to hear, it becomes crucially important to preserve that and protect it at the same time. I'm sure. Yeah.
Isn't that funny about hearing how once it starts getting injured, people start getting concerned?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And it's the prevention. I mean, that's and I want to actually talk about the World Health Organization, because that's really interesting. And you have so much history there, and you know, with different groups, NASA and SpaceX, which we'll also touch on. But tell me how you actually got involved with the World Health Organization and their project to protect hearing.
Okay, sure. You know,
it's a big subject, I know.
No, it's a great subject. In 2015, I was invited to Geneva, Switzerland, for a stakeholders meeting, the first one for what they called the Listen Safe Initiative. And what the World Health Organization determines are pandemics and other things, as we well know now what a pandemic is, don't we?
Right.
And so in 2015, they did a bunch of research and said that the next pandemic is going to be hearing loss. They were wrong. It was COVID, but the next pandemic, hearing loss, excuse me, and they predicted over 1 billion people between the ages of 15 and 35 will lose hearing in the next 15 to 20 years.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah.
All mainly because of listening devices and the portable.
Yeah. Loud
portability of
music
being able to
and
walking around
sure.
and having stuff in your ears, right? So they called a bunch of experts in, audiologists like myself. They brought in all the standards organizations, ITU, ISO, Sinilac, ANSI, all these groups came in. And then Apple and Samsung and Bose and Sony and Sennheiser and all the manufacturers and the president of Consumer Electronics. And the statement to them was, there are warning labels on pillows telling you not to get too close to an open flame. And yet there are millions of people injuring themselves with your device every day. And there's no warning, or if there is, it's not very accurate.
Right.
And what we want to do is show you how to give them the warning accurately, when to warn them with science, and ask you not asking you to force it, just to tell people, oh, by the way, you're too loud right now.
Yeah, develop some standards from the industry standards.
And so they bought in. And in fact, right now, and I'll tip my hat to Apple. Apple was at every meeting. Raj Desai and I have a couple of friends there, so Kuba Mazer and I go way back. But anyway, they were at all the meetings, and Apple has adapted it now. If you go to their health thing, they actually have a warning when you're listening too loud. The phone will say you've exceeded your daily dose of loudness for the day. Right. And you can say, don't show me this, but at least they're doing it, and they can set parental controls. So that was the first meeting of it, and it was very effective. And of course, it took us years to come up with the document for Apple or Samsung or whoever to use, because this is a real forum of people that get together. So you've got 80 experts that are geniuses. I'm the dumb guy in the group, I'm telling you. And we've got to come to a consensus. And it takes us, she go, Michael, okay, take your group to room C, and you've got 1 hour to answer these 5 questions, all these experts. When I have new respect for World Health, at least the hearing division, that's all I've worked with. I respect the whole organization, but the hearing division, Dr. Shelley Chadha is the head of she's an ear, nose, and throat doctor from India. She works in public health. She is fantastic. It's been a great experience for me, because it seems like all they care about is health, and they want a consensus. They don't force anything. Right. You can't be there if you're a commercial member trying. You have some financial gains, you can't come in. Yeah, it's very clean. Right. It's clean. So when somebody goes, oh, the drug companies and the WHO got together,
yeah,
they just are so particular about never being accused of that, because that would end them, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, the World Health Organization does so much good. There's always political stuff that it has nothing to do with your mission, and I think that hearing is a universal issue, right? Especially with young children, if you can get them when they're young and teach them proper hearing protection, that's really so important, I think.
So what we're doing is this will be World Hearing Day, right? This is World Hearing Day. I don't know what you're trying to say. This is World Hearing Day.
Yeah. So that's for everybody. It's March 3rd, which is when this is going to be released. So.
Yeah, March 3rd is World Hearing Day, and this year's theme is hearing care for all. And remember, this isn't about. So the World Hearing Forum has been recently developed. There is the World Hearing Report, which will be the first one launched. In other words, they actually have a report for hearing and hearing care around the world.
Great.
The first time it's ever been done. That's going to be launched at this meeting on May 3rd. And of course, the World Hearing Day, they have a hearathon. So all these activities are going around the globe. They all launch at 2 p.m. local time. So there's an activity or a group of them going on around the world with different groups and ministers of health and teachers and deaf people, and it's everything, right?
Yeah, it's
we're the little Listen Safe group.
It's very exciting, and they also have, if people can find them, I just actually in the last couple of days found them on Facebook. There's hashtags. There's a lot of information out there that folks can access.
So if you guys want to go to the Facebook page, it is the World Hearing Forum Change Makers is what you would look for. And the hashtags are, of course, hashtag World Hearing Forum and World Hearing Day and Safe Listening. That's my group. So the 4 groups are the World Hearing Report, the World Hearing Day people that plan this day.
Right.
There is the Champions group to try and get famous celebrities to try and promote hearing.
Sure.
And then there's a Listen Safe group. That's my group. I've been a core member since 2015. So now that we've finished we're still working on some, but most of the main objectives of the documents that were low for devices that were finally launched in 2018, February, we had a big, huge celebration. We've moved on to venues now. So the next thing is trying to figure out how to keep concerts safer for audiences.
Yeah. That's such a great mission. And I mean, the thing is, and people may not realize it at the time, but down the road, years from now, they're going to really appreciate the work you're doing. It's so important, I think.
It's fantastic. Yeah. And so it's a great group. So that's the thing with the World Health. It's a bunch of experts there. I'm a little bit of an outlier probably because I'm not connected with the university, which a lot of them are. And and researchers, which I do some research, but I'm not considered a researcher in my mind.
But you're the real world guy. You're the
They need me. They need
it's
some
so
real
important.
world once in a while, especially this group might sometimes need that because, they were making decisions one time about how loud a concert should be, and all these people were demanding that we should make measurements and keep it at a safe level.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, but when you're making the measurements with microphones and the crowd starts screaming and that's 110 dB.
Right. Yeah.
Who gets fined? The band? We must teach them not to scream loud. And then I realized that some of these people don't ever go to shows. And so I said, how many of you have been to a rock show in the last 20 years? And out of 30 people, like one. And I'm like, and you're making decisions.
Yeah, because
maybe you should go to a few shows and let's
the symphony is a little bit different than the Stones, right? It's all good. It's just different.
Absolutely.
One thing that's really interesting also about your background is the whole association with NASA, SpaceX. Can tell me how that came about?
Like everything else, when you have a mission and you believe in what you're doing, things just come to you. And actually, it started with a guy coming to me at a big music show, NAMM show, looking at my ear monitors and saying, he needed a suit on, he'd look very out of place. He goes, could you make one with a mic on it that goes like a noise canceling mic? And I go, maybe. And he goes, I'm with the Chicago Board of Trade and we're looking for communication devices for the floor because they're all on cell phones now for faster trading. And so I went to a company here, Knowles Electronics, and they helped me develop the product with one of their mics. And it took off. And then NASA came to Knowles and said, we need a communications device for our astronauts. And do you know anybody? Can you guys make something? No, but we know a company that is. And they set me up with them.
We know a guy.
Yeah. And so luckily, I actually spoke a lot with Dr. Steve Hart, who's still there. He's a flight medicine doctor. I don't think he's director. He should be, but he's anyway been there a long time. And he embraced it all. Very much so. And we started back with 1999, putting things on. I can't tell you everything about what goes up there. They do have one of our ear monitor sets that they use to work out in. The space station has a noise floor that just is constant. And so they need a break from that. And we have plugs special plugs they use on entry and exit and all this stuff into the atmosphere. I like when people go, does your silicone last very long? And I always go through Mach 5.
Right. And you mentioned too, like before we went on air, that there's a lot of testing on the components, on the chemicals.
Everything.
Right. Because you don't want to have a bad surprise in the space station. Of course.
Right. Yeah. So that's been a really rewarding thing. We've been very grateful to be part of that. We were really with the space shuttle program until it ended. And of course, now we go with whoever's launching up there, it's been the Russians basically that have been bringing everybody to the space station. So we work with Russian cosmonauts and anybody that's going up to the space station pretty much gets Sensaphonics products. And
that's exciting. I mean,
of them. It is very exciting. And I am privy to some of the research going on and some of the issues with wearing things up there and all that that I probably shouldn't share, but it's all. And
you've actually you mentioned that you've gone down to Houston actually and witnessed some of the trainings, and that must be exciting.
It's really fascinating. The whole thing is just amazing on how, and of course I love the whole astronaut space stuff.
Oh yeah, of course.
So it's like, it was really exciting for me. But yeah, there's a huge, giant mega pool. Big swimming pool with a space station in it, and they have their spacesuits on, and they're in there doing the things. They practice before they go up to the space station. I thought that was fantastic, and I probably shouldn't divulge anymore. I don't know how much is secret. So
yeah, it's okay. It's so exciting. And when I was reading your background, I was like, oh, that's interesting, because we see these companies like your Sensaphonics is known as a live music, in monitors, but you're doing so much more than that with your education.
That's our focus, though. Has always been
Right.
that. And then when somebody else comes to us, of course, like a NASA, we're not going to do it. Or we've gotten into the racing too. We were in the Indy Racing League. We were the only earpiece they could use for 10 years because we actually incorporated MEMS head accelerometers, these MEMS boards that were accelerometers measuring G-force and twisting on the head that would feed it to an onboard computer, so they could study what happens when somebody gets in an accident to make safer head restraints, because that's where the injuries are, all neck injuries and head injuries. So
it's great that you're able to, obviously you have the company, but also that you're able to keep your passion. You obviously have a passion for protection, for education. And I think that's so important.
I have a passion for hearing.
Well, hearing, yes.
And the fact that I just want to say, hearing, people just, you don't know until you lose it, right? So it's, and people say, why don't musicians protect themselves more? Because there's no deaf musicians, and the ones that are hearing impaired, I see them, they come in here crying because they know they're not enjoying what they used to do. I've had people tell me they play by rote. I can only hear enough. I've done the song 40 million times. That was the
John Entwistle story, right? John he got to the point where he just really couldn't hear. It's sad.
Yeah. Well, he's not the only one. And they're still out there. Believe me, they still play. So so it happens. And anyway.
Yeah, that's, your new technology. So was that actually the 3D ME? Was that released at this year's virtual NAMM show?
It was released last year at the 219. But, and we were really all set to, it's really started to go. And then it just dropped off the face of the earth, like every other product that Sensaphonics makes for, in April, things just started going downhill fast. Because nobody's buying live.
Nobody's touring.
Yeah. So luckily, we've been able to surf through it, but yeah, that's been around for a while. The beauty of it is that, so you've got these active microphones. Even if you didn't use them for the performance because you like the isolation, even between songs, you can just hit a button and talk to each other without ripping out of your head. So we've got worship leaders at these mega churches that like to wear your monitors, but as soon as they finish singing, they've got to pull them out so they can feel connected to the congregation and then put them back in for the song. And now they punch a button and it goes to full ambience and they can talk to everybody in the congregation and leave them activated and down when they're singing, and they still feel connected. They aren't disconnected anymore.
Yeah, you don't have to constantly be doing this, pulling them in and out. And
that's right. And we did demos to the Royal Opera House and BBC Orchestra in London, and they loved them compared to anything else they've tried, and they've tried everything. From baffles to plugs to all kinds of things. And these really allowed them to tune their instruments. So it's a great earplug. And I just had a band buy them locally here because they realized they didn't have to mic each other's instruments to hear each other. Because for a local band, when you think about it, you'd like to wear in-ears, but the problem is you can't carry a big board that has all these buses to take everybody's mix and send it into yours and into theirs and adjust
and maybe
them
the
all.
guitar players, maybe the monitor guy.
And even if they have it, they don't have the time. So a lot of them are just using what the guy gives them in a wedge from front of house, or if they have their own little board for in-ears, they can put themselves in there.
Right.
But then they have to try and hear each other. So this guy said, you mean I can just turn on these mics and mix everybody in and we don't have to worry about miking every instrument for each other? I go, right, this is it. He goes, so I can just put my own vocal and guitar in my in-ears and then just hear the band naturally. And we could use these at clubs. We can go anywhere with this setup.
Yeah.
And so that's another use for it. So it's really multi-use. And
it's so smart. And I think that's like somebody, I personally been using ears since 2003. And I totally, like when I first talked to your guy, Jack, who works with your company, and we talked about the technology, I'm like, I totally get 100% what that is. Because I'm so, I'm used to this sensation and being able to just hear like naturally, and it creates a much better comfort zone for musicians. And
even those I go, I kind of like the isolation. I go, well, you could just let in a few dB
Yeah,
just to give you some air feeling, right? I mean, just even if you don't want to hear a lot, you have control over that volume,
yeah,
right? So,
yeah. It's control. That's the thing, and the control and safer and control the
well,
volume
then the
level.
EQ and the limiter, those are the three main things. It has memory. So if you're in a jobbing band and you have, like you're doing a jazz trio and you want to use it for that, and then you go out and do a metal band the next night or something, you can have two presets. You just can memorize them. You don't have to sit there and EQ it every time.
Yeah, that's awesome. How can people reach you? I guess, well, sensaphonics.com, I think, is your website, right?
That is correct. And
then
the
you
3DME, which is a joint venture, is called ASIaudio.com.
Right, I was just going to mention that.
Audio.com, yeah.
Okay.
By Sensaphonics, right?
Hey, great. And then people, if they have more questions, there's a lot of information on the website, but they can also reach you through the website via email, correct?
Correct. Absolutely.
Awesome.
I'm always happy to talk to anybody.
That's terrific. Thank you so much, Michael, for all the information.
Thanks,
We could go on for a long time. You have so much background.
But, all right.
Yeah,
and I really appreciate it. I'm grateful for the time.
Well, awesome. And I appreciate your time and all the efforts from your staff helping us put this together. And the World Health Organization is doing some great stuff for this. So we'll definitely be participating, and they're aware of what we're doing.
Okay, all you people, remember to tweet something or hashtag something, or go to the Sensaphonics, or even to your site and hashtag,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Video. And so,
we'll help get the word out for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Darrell. Bye.
Great.